Welcome to PEP Talks with Eric, the podcast where self-work becomes system work. I'm your host, Eric Ayers, creator and author of SimRx, Transforming Healthcare, Leadership, and Culture by Design. This show is your space to shift perspectives, ignite action, and remember who you are and who we are in the process. Every week, we spark transformation, from burnout to breakthrough, from surviving to designing. You'll hear real stories, real tools, and real humans doing real work. So let's shift, let's build, and let's spark what's next together. I'll see you inside. Guys, welcome to another episode of PEP Talks with Eric. I'm your host, Eric Ayers, and as always, I have an exciting one for you today. We're going to dive right into this. I was introduced to Randy Sparks by a colleague of ours, Randy McNeely, and we met, hit it off, and decided to say, yeah, let's get together and hit record. So we're going to start right there. Randy, man, thanks so much for joining us.
Well, it is my pleasure. And I'll start out again by saying, thank you to Randy McNeely, the kindness superhero who finds good people and puts them together. And so I'm honored to be part of the group that he's connecting to someone else.
The kindness group. It's a different energy to be associated with within his Justice League of kindness people. I love it.
Right.
That's awesome. So I'm going to start off with diving into you run a podcast or host of a podcast, Sparks of Gratitude. Let's start there. Tell me the backstory of Sparks of Gratitude.
Oh, well, the backstory, there's a lot of wonderful things that I've learned and where this came from. I'll talk about the genesis of it and why gratitude is so important to me, where the podcast came from, what got in the way of this and what I've learned along the way. I think that's really important. But at the end of the day, it came from a lesson that I've learned, which I'm not the first one to learn this. I didn't invent gratitude. I mean, Cicero said that gratitude isn't just the greatest of all virtues, but it's the mother of all, something like that, right? I should probably know precisely what the quote is. But for me, I believe that gratitude doesn't just change lives, but it also can save them. And it's changed my life to learn more about gratitude, to practice gratitude, and to embody gratitude. And so I've learned a lot of different layers of what gratitude actually is. And I think many people, we can explore that in this conversation. But for me and my wife, about 15 years ago, we were visiting with a counselor, a therapist that we get together with from time to time. He's a positive psychologist named Dr. Paul Jenkins. And in one of our conversations with him, he invited us to keep a daily gratitude practice, but not just write down, I'm grateful for chocolate chip cookies, and I'm grateful for sunsets, and when my daughter kisses me on the cheek, all of which are real, and they are sincere things for which I am grateful. However, he said, I want you to take a portion of those things that you identify for which you're grateful, which are challenges, which are difficult. How do you find gratitude in the hard stuff? Right? He said, that's what really powers it up. And so we began the practice. And so daily I would keep a daily gratitude practice and keep in mind finding gratitude in the hard things. Okay. And so we did that, on and off somewhat consistently for, many, many years. And I filled volumes of gratitude journals. But what I noticed through that process is that it didn't change my circumstances. It didn't change the world around me. However, everything did change because the person navigating that world was different. I saw things differently, right? The world didn't change, but the person navigating it did. That's where gratitude really changes lives, okay? So I could have the exact same experience, but how do I experience it? It's all up to me. So that was what started all of it. And then my wife and I were going through something pretty challenging and painful. I worked with a partner at an old law firm, which was an amazing 9 years of my life. And that partnership dissolved, which I didn't expect. And it was really painful. But through that process, we noticed there were just these shining flecks of gold throughout that we wouldn't have seen were it not through this challenge. And even though we were going through something that for us was painful, we actually realized that it brought an opportunity for us to see something much greater. And then after going through this, we noticed, we actually felt inspired or impressed that a higher power wanted us to do some good. We've been given a lot in this world and wants us to give back. But we didn't know what that meant, and we didn't know how or what to share or give.
Yeah.
And he wasn't going to tell us what that was.
Of course.
We needed to figure that out. And this took us some months but knowing that we were being invited and encouraged to do something, but not knowing what that was. Mm-hmm. And the truth is, I don't think it mattered what it was. I think it was that it was something. However, we said, well, what is meaningful to us? And we said, well, there's this gratitude practice that we like. It really just seemed like this little daily habit. It didn't seem like some grand thing. And that's why we didn't think of it off the top. But we said, well, we appreciate this practice that's been meaningful to us. Why don't we just offer it to people? And so we started printing gratitude journals. We came up with the name Sparks of Gratitude, which I think sounds awesome. Yes. And we started printing gratitude journals, these 90-day, like simplified gratitude journals, and started giving them away. And I mean, we've given away thousands of them. And I mean, you can go to sparksofgratitude.com, and there's even some free downloads for, a little gratitude worksheet. But we started doing that. And then through this process, I started to think about the many people that I've met in my life who have stories to tell, who've experienced something, who've overcome a challenge, who've made decisions in their life. And regardless of who they are, what their profession is, everybody's going through their version of triumphs and challenges. Mm. Triumphs, tragedies, experiences, lessons learned. And I said, well, let's talk about it. Let me hear your experience and what you've learned and how gratitude fits in. And so that's where the Sparks of Gratitude podcast came up. One of the funny things about it is that I delayed starting the podcast for about 2 years because I was afraid to start and I didn't know how to do it. And I knew I was going to. But so this is another lesson that I'm thinking, well, I told people about it for a long time. I said, hey, Eric, I'm going to start this podcast called Sparks of Gratitude. And then, you might say, oh, Randy, that's so amazing. Well, what happened to me when people would say that is they'd say, I would get the satisfaction of doing something when I hadn't done anything. Right. And so I'd get all the dopamine without having done any work. And so I went through the steps of talking to people about it for a long time. But then it came down to the moment when I was on the phone with a mentor, guy I look up to so much named Bob Goff. And he says, well, what are you waiting for? And I was like, oh, crap. Like he put me on the spot saying, well, why haven't you done it yet? Press record. Just start. And so I did. That pushed me over the edge. And I said, I can't act like I'm doing something when I'm not. And so I started the podcast about 1.5 years ago and been going ever since.
Oh, man. So, yes, this brings me back to our initial conversation where, Sparks of Gratitude fully embodied me because part of what I'm here to do is provide sparks of transformation. And the most transformative energy that I've tapped into is gratitude. And with that, appreciation, because, appreciation appreciates. And so they kind of worked hand in hand. So we could go down many different rabbit holes here and kind of pull this out. I love how there was this introduction to you and your wife of gratitude, right? And intentional gratitude beyond what are the great things in your life, but where is the gratitude within the hardships? Because we experience both. We experience the good, the bad, but gratitude has to live in the middle of that, right? And by going on this journey, it becomes the service that is provided after, up to that point, maybe one of the most difficult professional um, difficulties is, the partnership, right? Dissolving. So being able to have these micro moments that are now leading to this macro shift, because it's kind of the way you described it was you didn't feel like it was this big thing because you've been doing the small things every day. Like that encompasses change in my opinion. And this is way easier for me looking on the outside, taking your story and being like, oh, this is putting it all together. But living in this, what does it feel like when you get to that point and understand the investments that you and your wife put in towards this gratitude project, now leading towards a purposeful thing that is shifting lives? What is the feeling that resonates from that?
The feeling, well, one, noticing or having the awareness to notice that sometimes is difficult. Have you ever read the book The Gap in the Gain?
I haven't read it. I've heard a lot of information on it.
Yeah, well, and the reason I point that out is because it points out something I talk to people about too, is sometimes it's hard to recognize the progress one has made, right? Because I am where I am, and often I'm looking at where I'm not. And this is normal. This is okay. People do this. It's not like, oh man, I'm so awful. That I don't want to shame myself
Right.
for feeling that way. I simply feel that way, right? Where I'm like, I'm not where I want to be. It doesn't look like it's supposed to look. There's this gap between where I am and where I want to be, or where I'm supposed to be, where I desire to be, right? And if I focus on the gap from where I am to where I'm not, that's a diminishing mindset. However, if I just do this and I turn around and I look backwards, I look at the gain from where I began to where I am now, right? This is a radical shift in how I appreciate and feel about myself and how far I've come, right? And so the exercise that can help somebody see things this way is to pause and write whether this is a written gratitude letter or simply just a meditation in one's own mind of gratitude for my prior younger self, right? And so if I pause and look backwards at that Randy from a year ago, 5 years ago, 3 years ago, or the accumulation of all of that, and I start to look at the gain of where I've come, but how do I look at those gains? One way is to express gratitude for my younger self, for the challenges I've overcome, for the sacrifices I've made, for the decisions that I've made that were gifts to my present self. Now, all of a sudden, my heart and mind have expanded, one, with gratitude, with love, with compassion, with empathy, and joy for, one, appreciation for where I am, how far I've come, but then love for the person who brought me here, right? And this is particularly a focus on, and it's not a selfish exercise. It's an expanding exercise, right? Because there's also a version of this where you can go and express gratitude for the people surrounding me that helped me as well. But this one's particularly for gratitude for my younger self. And then what that's done is it gives me gratitude for myself, really, like who helped me get here? Who created this? And these are all the gains that I've made.
Right.
And then what does that do to shift me looking forward? I'm saying, well, I am now the present self making gifts to my future self. And that decision, I have a new perspective on that of, I can notice and pay attention and then be deliberate. That's a quote from someone on my podcast, Justin Hackworth, who's a photographer. And he pointed out that gratitude's like taking a photograph. You notice, you pay attention, and you be deliberate.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so I can do that as a gift to my future self. And then that's how I make those moves towards those future gains.
What a beautiful way to recognize that we're imperfect. However, the decisions that we make and the the trials that we go through and the decisions propel us to who we need to become to get us through the lessons, but also like to get to that point where we can start seeing the world as Neville Goddard suggested, as seeing from the in. And now we're no longer products of environment or products of situations, but we're like, okay, I'm so happy and grateful now that whatever the case may be that we're setting this future self up for. And what clicked through your analogy and your story, Randy, was when I say I'm so happy and grateful now that I now have an emotion of this energy of this dude who's worked his tail off, right? To be who I am, to now give the next gift forward. So like, what a different understanding and a different stage to step on. So genuinely, I'm grateful for that. Thank you. And what an amazing gift for ourselves. What an incredible gift.
Yeah, just breathe and take that in. It's a beautiful process to do. And guess what? Everybody listening, you have that capacity in this moment to pause and feel and give that gratitude to your younger self. Just take a breath and sit in that, right? I mean, you are amazing. Like, you are here. You are amazing. You are worth it. You are valued. You matter. And you invested in yourself to bring you to where you are. It's amazing. And this is another thing that Dr. Paul Jenkins, the one who invited us to keep this daily gratitude practice years ago,
Right.
would always repeat to my wife and me, you're right on schedule. You are right on schedule, right? You are where you are. You can't be somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
You are exactly where you are, and you're right on schedule, right? And so I believe deeply that you talk about how gratitude is this high frequency emotion. That you didn't precisely say that, but you inferred that at the beginning.
Right.
And it really is one of the highest frequency emotions that we feel. All our emotions have a frequency. Mm-hmm. And, people can imagine that, like, what's the difference of how you feel when you feel despair versus joy or gratitude or peace? Okay, those feel different. Every emotion actually has a frequency. Okay, gratitude is right there near the top. I would say that gratitude is the highest form of acceptance of what is. If someone wants me to describe what is a concise, deep definition of gratitude, that's what I would say. Gratitude is the highest form of acceptance of what is. Okay? Because we are where we are experiencing what we experience, and the degree of our acceptance of that is this capacity to be grateful in the experience, right? And I think this references the challenge, when we have the challenging moments, when we have the difficult moments, some of which are those that we made stupid choices and we're suffering the consequences, right? Sometimes we're experiencing something completely out of our control. Let's talk about Viktor Frankl. You read Man's Search for Meaning, right? Many of your listeners probably have. But Viktor Frankl is a man who's, he was a psychologist too. He's in Auschwitz, right? He's a Jewish man in Auschwitz. His family's been killed, and he's in a concentration camp. And he said during that experience that everything can be taken from a man except, we might need to edit this because I just got the quote.
It's fine.
So everything can be taken except for one's capacity to choose their attitude in any given set of circumstances, right? Really? Like in that moment, right? And so this is our capacity, this acceptance of what is allows us to choose how we respond, right? And so I would say it's not always saying I am grateful for, but I can be grateful in, grateful through, right? And sometimes, so I had a guest who lost her husband, and she wrote a book about it, talking about how she went through that grief process. It's called Relaxed. It's really, she's a Christian pastor, and leaning into Christ and how that helped her through this grief process. She told me, she says, the book and other things reflect the lessons she learned through that process, all of which are just transcendent. She does say, I would give them all back to have him, right? However, she is where she is. And it's acceptance of that, and an acceptance of the gifts that she's received through this process. That's where gratitude can come in the deepest, darkest, challenging moments, right? So I can choose to be a victim and then live in that. Or I can choose to take the gains through that.
Two things I would love to highlight and maybe dive in. One is I was introduced to a level of gratitude that had never been proposed in this way by Jake Ducey, who was, a student of Bob Proctor and Wayne Dyer, who, this is how I found him. But he says often that gratitude has a future signature. And I'm like, I don't fully understand at the moment until I started experimenting with it. And, gratitude, when someone gives us a gift, we automatically have this gratefulness, this gratitude reception of it. And it's like, okay, now I'm starting to get it, because if I'm in something or going through a situation, if I can have gratitude, I'm already setting this signature up to say, where are the gifts? Because I'm so happy and grateful for them. So that was a highlight that I wanted to throw out there, because gratitude is an interesting frequency, especially when you look at Hawkins' map of consciousness, the different levels of emotions. Like, it has its own feeling. All emotions, they're feelings, so they have to have their own frequency. The other piece to this, that was just kind of like this, continue to expand on my understanding of, this term of, or this idea of future signature. The other aspect is Bob Proctor's paradigm shift and his paradigm analogy through his stick figure. And you depicted that so well, because, I love how everyone takes pieces of different things and then formulates a different idea. And it's like, I never thought of it that way. So Viktor Frankl, says you can take everything away except for my ability to basically put a meaning on whatever input's coming in. And this paradigm shift stick figure says, I have 5 inputs from my physical world: sight, taste, smell, hear, touch. And every time something comes in, I think consciously. And if I haven't felt this before or heard this before, I apply meaning. It goes in my subconscious, and I'm creating habitual patterns, because then it leads into my emotion, my energy in motion. And then I feel, hear it, see it again. And then we built this. But likewise, we have things like intuition, imagination, that we have all these thoughts and we put meaning on it. And the brilliant aspect that I'm finding in this conversation is when we come to the world with gratitude, all these inputs are now being judged by gratitude instead of being judged by not enough. And we're shifting paradigms, and we're not really doing anything different internally. All we're doing is giving different meanings. So we're intentionally using the 5% of our mind that we have control over to shift the 95% of our habitual patterns to go in a different energy and motion, or a different emotion. So the two things that are coming together in this wild analytical mind right now, and then feeling every single bit of it. So thank you for expanding my world in that. Thank you.
Yeah. When you're right on, the paradigm shift it's really what filter is, all the inputs that are flowing in. I can respond if I oversimplify this, I can respond in two ways. Instead of saying, well, why is this happening to me? Instead, how is this happening for me? That's the shift, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so as I'm experiencing anything, but how do I learn to do that, right?
Right.
One, we consciously choose all right, I'm reacting or responding to any stimulus that's happening to me, right, in any given moment. Viktor Frankl again says that between stimulus and response, there's this space, right? And that's the space where we can then have that choice to say, okay, this is my moment. And the more I can elongate that space to give myself the capacity to choose how I respond instead of react.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And that's where I can practice, how is this happening for me, right? And I might not know in the moment, but I've created, built up enough evidence in my experience that I trust that I will know how this is happening for me. And that will be augmented over time, where I know that I am actually going through something that is painful right now, and I don't know yet how this is happening for me, but I know that it is, and that I might see later. And that's why I like the look backwards exercise, because then in the future me, it has the signature, this future signature, right?
Yeah.
The future me can then reflect back and see, wow, look what I learned through that. Look how I grew through that. So that's where I think the daily habit, it's the starting point, right? There's, if you read, any habit research, Charles Duhigg wrote a great book, The Power of Habit, or, Atomic Habits is amazing books that teach about the importance of habit. Well, gratitude is a habit too. This is something that we practice, and then it becomes a shift in how somebody can view and walk into the circumstances. So start the habit, and if in that daily gratitude practice, it may seem and feel surface level, right? But what I've done is I'm putting in the reps, right? And so then when the challenging thing arrives, I've built up some habitual capacity to see in a new way.
Yes. And we tend to find what we're looking for. So, to Wayne Dyer's amazing quote of, do you live in a loving world or a hostile world? Same world. What we look for, we get. So if we train to look for gratitude, we're going to find it. That's my story. My wife was like, look for something good because it's there. You have to find it. And when I found good, I was so far away from seeing good that when I saw it, that is all I wanted to see. And it was the habit every single day was, I wonder what it's going to be good. What am I going to find that's good? And it was everywhere. And I'm like, this is the same place I've worked in my entire professional career so far. What shifted? To your point at the beginning of this, nothing on the external shifted, everything on the internal shifted, because I'm now looking at this through a different prism, through this kaleidoscope of glasses now, that's like, oh my God, this is amazing. Where has this been the whole time? Oh, it's always been here. I just chose not to see it. So that's huge. And that's a superpower that we have that I think either we don't permit ourselves to see the world that way, or we are blinded to our own self. And yeah.
Yeah, and I think sometimes that's just the natural human response. Our brains or our egos have two jobs. That's to keep us safe and prove us right.
Yes.
And that's natural and normal. And sometimes that response to keep us safe is resist what it perceives to be danger. Sometimes that's an emotion we don't want to feel, right? And it's like, no, fear, sadness, I don't want to feel that emotion. And so, right? However, sometimes these emotions are productive for us, right? Every emotion is good emotion, right?
Right.
But it's our capacity for that. I thought of something. I grew up watching Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood when I was a kid, and Fred Rogers is just such an inspiring and admirable man. And I I'm attributing it to him, but my memory may be wrong, but the lesson is accurate regardless. But I think it was Mr. Rogers, Fred Rogers, who there was an instance when there was some disaster, natural disaster maybe, something like that had happened, and they're watching the TV and looking at, the aftermath and so on. Yeah. And somebody's just distraught, maybe a child looking and saying, "Oh man, it's just so awful," and all this destruction. And he said, "Well, look for the helpers. There's always helpers, right?" And so it's the choice to look in this, justifiable to say that, this horrible thing that's happened, right? But in that, are you choosing to see the good, the kindness, the service, the helpers, the compassion, right? What am I looking for?
Yes. Yes. And can I add to that a little bit? This is the beauty of humanity and human connection and the ripples and the pebbles that we throw, because that story resonates with me as well. And it was a lesson learned from his mom. His mom taught him, and then he's teaching the world. This is the power of humanity. When we invest and give someone a pebble, then now they have a pebble to throw their own pebble into the water to create ripples. And it's these ripples expand into the world. And absolutely, as we live through that experience of seeing what we want to find, we give other people permission to do the same thing. And it's what a beautiful analogy of we get to find whatever we want, just decide on what we're gonna search for, and then B, giving people permission to do the same and expanding that. I love that.
Yeah, it is inspiring and expanding. And speaking of expansion, I mean, I don't want to overlook the magnitude of the idea of the pebble analogy in the water, because the size of the pebble is minuscule, right? Oh, well, this doesn't make a difference. No, it doesn't, right? This tiny act of kindness, this tiny act of compassion, right? But when that's dropped into the water, how much bigger are the ripples than the stone, right? How far do those ripples extend, right? And how many ripples? It's not just a single ripple expanding outward, it's multiple, right? And so that applies too to the simple act of kindness that's as tiny as a pebble, you might imagine, right? But the expansive potential that carries within it is beyond what you may ever know, right? So no act of kindness, compassion, or gratitude is too small. And it feeds itself, right? And so kindness begets gratitude, which begets kindness, which begets gratitude, which begets kindness, which begets gratitude, right? This expansion changes lives, saves lives, changes your world as well as those around you.
Beautifully put. And I was immediately taken to that scenario of my wife saying, a simple hug and find something good, right? That's a very tiny pebble in the grand scheme of things that shifted everything. Like, I was introduced to pure love and safe masculinity that evening. Like, two of the greatest things I could have found in my entire life because of this pebble that basically echoed, right? When I see and think of a pebble, I think of echoes, and it continues to echo. So it's almost as if, habitual patterns, we repeat and say the same thing over and over, repeat actions to create a pattern. Well, echoes do that on our behalf. So if we're echoing, we're 10xing this, we're 100xing this, and it's like, cool. And that's the way I see the ripple. So I love that you brought that up, because it's not the size of the pebble, it's the intentionality behind it, I believe.
Yeah, massive potential.
It's like it's like the acorn doesn't look like an oak tree as an acorn, but the potential in there is to be, a giant force within the forest, and to be what it's meant to be, which is amazing.
I love it.
So, oh man, I could probably dive into this all day long. Tell me what's going on in your world right now. What are some new things that you're working on, or some exciting things that you're working on?
What are some exciting things that I'm working on? Well, one, the podcast just continues to grow. I feel like I'm growing and expanding simply by having new conversations, right? And I'll admit the podcast is something that, and maybe you identify with this, it takes time, takes work, takes effort. It's not convenient,
Right.
uh, right? Costs money. But the question I ask myself is, what if I just kept going, right? And so this is an opportunity for me to do that. What if I just kept going? Now, then what can this become, right? Take one more step forward, have one more episode. And I look back now and, 60, 70 interviews I've done so far is what I've learned through that process, through the eyes and experiences and hearts of someone else, right? So there's all this newness. Yet all of it comes back to what I can identify with. It's an interesting thing that it's got both parts of that where it's all new because I didn't experience that thing, yet at the same time, my heart and soul connect with people that go through that. So there's this sharing. My I have a friend who often says this to me that that which is most private is most universal. And so sometimes somebody shares their, a private individual experience that they have.
Yeah.
And once that's shared, somebody else does this. Me too, right? And I might think that I am unique, I'm alone in this experience that I have.
Yeah.
Then if I share that with somebody else, well, they identify with it, right? And so that's this privately universal experience that's happening. And so this is something that I'm working on is continuing the conversation, right? And then other than that, new boundaries in my life are, my oldest son is 18 years old. He's moving to thousands of miles away for 2 years for a church service in Solomon Islands for 2 years. And this is a new stage in my life where I'm so excited for him and the experience and adventure and growth that he's going to have. And I'm also, my heart is torn because my son's going to be gone for 2 years, right? It is, but the pain only exists because of the love, right? And how's that going to affect my family, right? The dynamic is going to change. His best friend, my daughter, is going to be without her brother for 2 years. Mm-hmm. And the love is not gone. But they're just new changes and people leaving the home. And so I'm experiencing this for the first time of being, my oldest is leaving the house and how that changes for my daughters and myself and my wife. Now our family starts to look and feel different. So I think that stretching I'm experiencing one of those new milestones of stretching in my house, which I'm excited for, and I'm afraid, right? But I just published a podcast today. I don't know when this is going to publish, but anyway, where I interviewed someone about bravery, and bravery cannot exist where fear wasn't first present.
Absolutely.
Right? And so I always, I experience a lot of fear, but fear is often the signal of the direction I should go. So,
yes, a few amazing points. One, yes, courage is not the absence of fear; it's what you did in spite of or with the fear. Right? Mm-hmm. Seth Godin describes it as when fear comes in, a lot of times made known as imposter syndrome. It's like, oh, thank you. You just let me know I'm onto something. This is something new. I've never done this before. Of course, I'm going to be an imposter. So what would it look like if I dance with this fear? And after this tango of this dance, I come out with courage. Awesome. Very difficult in the time of fear. But if we're able to self-reflect and to future cast ourselves, like, what does this look like? And speaking of what does this look like, you've brought up two really good questions. And it's not about the questions, it's the way in which you asked it is brilliant. The first one was how, and the second one was what. And these are like, to me, hacks out of this habitual behavior because a lot of times we can say, well, why did we do that? No, how can we? And then fill in the blanks. And it automatically shifts our mind out of how dare you? Why did you do this? Into, oh, there's an answer. And my mind, as you stated, part of it is to make me right. And I'm telling it there's an answer and I want you to find it. And now we're in a world of possibility. So to scale this in design thinking, one of the greatest questions is how might we ... How might we help someone achieve whatever benefit they're needing? And we shift out of why did we do this? Why can't we do that? Into there's a solution and we're all here going to find it and we're going to find it together. Go. And all of a sudden we're 5-year-olds again in the same sandbox, building this sandcastle together instead of siloed in different sandboxes saying mine's going to be bigger than yours. Mine's got water. No, all of ours are together. And the beauty in asking ourselves questions to tap into that world of possibility is one of the most genius things I think I've ever been introduced to. So I wanted to point that out, that the questions were spot on, my friend.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So with this newness, this change, this stretching, as I like the way you said that. It's almost like we create boundaries in our lives, and then okay, those are going to stretch onto the what's the next phase. Within that, you identify dichotomies and the importance of dichotomies to say, there's like love over here and there's fear over here, and we can feel both of them based on the almost the opposition of the other one. I'm wondering, there's a thought formulating right now. I'm a question that I'm proposing in my mind right now, but like, what are the importance of dichotomies in your world, if you've ever given that thought?
I've given it a lot of thought and gone deep into this. Actually, a dear friend of mine named Curtis Morley does a lot of work. If you look up counterfeit emotions, is what it's called, counterfeitemotions.com, look it up. He's identified this idea that, and he's on a mission to help people move away from counterfeit emotions into authentic emotions, and defines, what is the difference between the two. And then there's these 36 or something dyads of authentic versus a counterfeit emotion. And in this conversation comes up the idea of how you've kind of identified this question. What I like about looking at this in the counterfeit versus authentic emotion is that all emotions are meant to be felt but not held, right? They're energy in motion, right? And then identifying now counterfeit emotions, they're sneaky, right? But the difference between an authentic and a counterfeit emotion is that an authentic emotion, among other things, there's a process that he evaluates how to determine which is a counterfeit and which is an authentic emotion. But one of the things that an authentic emotion does is it connects, right? And that connects me to self, to others, to higher power. But a counterfeit emotion disconnects, right? So let's look at a couple of them. Guilt is an authentic emotion. Shame is its counterfeit, right? And shame is the wolf in sheep's clothing that puts on and wants one to think, and this is what they're feeling. But what does shame do versus guilt? Guilt comes from love and compassion and drives connection. So even though it's a low frequency emotion, it is an authentic emotion that brings me towards somebody. I only feel guilt because I care about somebody, because I love somebody, because I want reconciliation, right? And I feel like I might have behaved in a way that is contrary to what I value, right? That brings guilt, and guilt desires connection and resolution. But what does shame do? Shame says, I am not enough, right? And shame feeds shame, right? And so, and it disconnects me from my isolate, right? And so that's how we look at the counterfeit versus authentic emotions. But there's a whole bunch of other ones. There's pain versus misery. There's nice versus kind, right? There's love versus lust. There's all these things where one masquerades as the other, but it really disconnects. So I've thought about this a lot. And that's where I like the idea of why pain, rather than looking at it as emotions which are opposite each other, I look at it as emotions that are an authentic and a counterfeit, right? And where pain is an authentic emotion, misery is the counterfeit, right? You know, pain is inevitable, misery is optional, right? Well, why is pain an authentic emotion? It hurts, right? It's the actual definition of it.
Yeah.
Well, but how is pain good, right? Right? Well, when I'm training for something, you know, fitness wise, or when I'm learning or I'm studying in school, all of it is like a painful stretch.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Or my son leaving for 2 years, right? I feel pain. But why do I feel the pain? I feel it because if I had no connection to him, I wouldn't feel any pain, right? And so that pain arrives because of love, right? And so that they all, I mean, if you fill up a balloon, I've seen this illustrate, you know, you fill up a balloon and on one side of it, you write on a marker pain, and on the other side, you write love. You know, if I want to diminish that pain, I'm also diminishing the love, right? And so anytime we open our heart big enough to feel that love, there's also the risk of pain, heartbreak. Right? And so man, this could be a whole, you know, series of conversations going into this. However, yes, I have thought about it a lot.
That, what a brilliant way to describe that. What an absolute brilliant, because yes, the shame, for example, like, just adds to more guilt, but it's not going anywhere. It's that just continuous cycle, right? And I never thought
shame wants you to think it's guilt.
right, right.
Yeah.
And I never thought about it in terms of one connects you and one disconnects, because up until this moment, I had thought about it as this hierarchical level, right? Of like, guilt all the way up to, the CD consciousness of, love, joy, peace. But no, there's a counterpart to it of no, the disconnect can create a masquerade of something that you think is connected, but it's actually disconnected. And so my mind's going into isolation now, into like depression, into all of these things that are legit disconnect from human connection. That's ultimately what it is. And yes, to your point, this could be a series of conversations. And I got a lot of things firing right now. Thank you for that, man.
Counterfeit emotions. It's good stuff.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for dropping that in. I appreciate that. Randy, I think we could talk for hours and hours, and I appreciate that about you. What, if anything, would you like to share with the audience that we might not have talked about?
Well, I would just say that you're right on schedule. You matter. You are enough. And now take a moment, close your eyes, look backwards, and give gratitude to your younger self. That's my invitation.
Beautiful. Beautiful. I was taken into the presence of Louise Hay and hearing her teach me about mirror work of and seeing yourself. And you expanded on that by saying, no, your past self is not simply your child. That's part of it, but it's the person who's given you all the gifts that you have today, or that I have today. So thank you for that, Randy. Man, where can people find you?
Sparksofgratitude.com look at YouTube. All my podcasts are on YouTube, all the podcast platforms. Had some amazing conversations. They all inspire me. It's about them. They have the so much of what I learn or what I know or what I do is because somebody else shared it with me. And so I'm collecting wisdom, right? And I feel so fortunate that I've been able to be around people that share that with me. And I'm hoping that impacts someone else. So yeah, on all the socials and, sparksofgratitude.com.
Awesome. And you're not simply receiving and taking in wisdom, you're sharing those with the world. So thank you. Thank you for creating ripples in this Ubuntu culture of I am because we are, because ultimately I am way better from this conversation, and I'm better for knowing you, Randy. So man, thank you for sharing your wisdom, your brilliance, your joy, my friend. Always a pleasure.
Yep. Thank you, Eric. And everybody, if you haven't, like Eric's thing, share it with somebody else. I mean, this is the work, sharing positive goodness. Like, this is the ripple. Help expand this ripple.
Thank you for that. Awesome. Well, guys, thank you for joining. And as Randy said, if you like this, if you enjoyed it, like it, share it, subscribe, send it to someone who you think would find value in this, and reach out to Randy, reach out to myself. We would love to have conversations like this with you. So if interested, if you need help, guidance, support, or you just want to drop another nugget in our knowledge bucket, then send it our way. And we appreciate you. I'm so grateful for each and every one of you. Looking forward to seeing you next time. Until then, be well, be loved. Thank you for listening to PEP Talks with Eric. If something sparked today, pass it forward. Remember to subscribe and share it with someone who needs it. Keep doing the thing. Keep showing up. You're not alone in this, and we're not whole without you. I'll see you next time.